Another day, another class to put under the microscope. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether you're just here for the magical secrets or you realize that bards actually have other features as well, I'm here to help you with everything. Part 2 in my new series. I started out with the fighter because I claimed that was also the first class I did an RP video for. Apparently, that was a blatant lie. My first role-playing video was for the Bard, so my first class video should have been for the Bard as well. To kind of rectify this mistake, today we will be picking the Bard apart bit by bit. Said Bard video can of course also be paired up with the Bard RP video to stock up on role-playing concepts for your beloved troubadour. And chances are of course still pretty big that the Bard is not your favorite class, and nor was the fighter, and you're anxiously waiting for my video that will kind of dissect your class. Obviously, to remain up to date, you will have to push the dreaded subscribe button. So, what are the expectations for the Bard class? Bards are kind of expected to be decent at everything. The old jack of all trades idiom certainly fits them, though the master of none follow-up does not. There are quite a few areas at which the Bard does excel. They are excellent support. They have a very decent amount of battlefield control. They are going to be good or awesome at almost any skill check, thanks to various skill features, and of course, their very well known magical secrets feature, which makes every Timmy Power player goes like, oh boy, I do want to play a Bard at some point. Some of the subclasses even allow you to wade into the thick of battle thanks to extra armor proficiencies or weapon proficiencies. So it is not impossible to make a Bard that relies on his weaponry a bit more, or that could actually function as some sort of tank for the party. Is there anything that Bards cannot do? No, not really. They are very flexible, but once you've decided on what you want to do, you are a bit less flexible. Why is that? Well, Bards function with a spells known system as opposed to a cleric's or a druid's prepared spells thingy, which means that once you've selected what spells you want your Bard to have, it is a lot harder to swap those out. A cleric or a druid can do so at the end of any long rest. Bards can only swap out one spell every time they level up. So your choices do matter, but you can build your Bard into almost anything. To be fair, the Master of None bit does apply somewhat. While the Bard can be good at almost anything, he doesn't have that many features. At least the base class doesn't have any real feature that boosts a certain playstyle. There's no subclass that promotes healing either, by the way, but that doesn't make you a bad healer. If you're playing the Bard, you just can't expect to be Life Cleric good at healing. But to compensate, you will be good at other things as well that the Life Cleric can't really do. Just to be clear beforehand, at certain levels I'm going to go very quickly over the features that you gain. That is possibly because you've already gained this feature and it is an upgrade, or it is yet another ability score increase. And honestly, there's so much to talk about with the Bard that I don't have too much time to delve too deeply in those. Remember, I'm here to explain how the class works, not necessarily what to do at every level up. That will be covered in my many build videos. So, at level 1, let's start by looking at ability scores. For Bards, it is very simple. Charisma is your most important ability score. You are a full spellcaster. You are going to get spells from cantrip and first level all the way up to those glorious 9th level spells, and you want them to have an effect. If you want to control the battlefield, you need enemies to fail saving throws, so you need a high charisma. It's not just for the control spells, even some buff spells and healing spells, actually quite a lot of those, are affected by your spellcasting modifier. Take Healing Word for example, very well known first level spell. It heals for 1d4 plus your spell modifier. So the higher your charisma, the higher the free bonus healing from the spell will be. And that's just at first level. This trend continues all the way up to the higher levels. Like any character, you want a fair amount of constitution. Obviously, constitution is there to keep you alive, but it also serves as a buffer to keep your concentration spells going. As you know, whenever you take damage while you're concentrating on a spell, you have to make a concentration save. If you fail this save, your spell is kaput. So to prevent your spells from breaking and bad stuff from happening, the higher your constitution, the longer you will be able to keep those spells in a solid state while being attacked. The last stat you have to invest in will be dexterity. It's a bit on equal footing with constitution. It's going to be the choice between, do I want stronger concentration saves and more hit points, or do I want better armor class and more weapons and a bit of other stuff. If your race doesn't give you a bonus in either, it's still best to raise them both to at least 14, because you are going to rely on these stats a lot. Why dexterity? It's pretty simple. Most bards wear light armor, which means that all of your dexterity bonus, the entire plus modifier that you hopefully have, is going to be added to your armor class on top of whatever meager bonuses your actual armor will provide you with. Of course, dexterity also has an influence on your initiative score and your dexterity saving modifier, which is already going to be pretty high because you're proficient in the save, so it's going to be really good. And for those bards that also want to make use of their weapons, chances are about 90% that you will be using ranged weapons or finesse weapons to do that. Bards with strength weaponry, it's possible, but it's a lot less common. So you want to pump up that dexterity to use those weapons. Those bards that use weapons usually do get medium armor, so they're a bit less reliant on dex for their armor, but then, as I said, they need it for their weaponry. I've said this before, but dexterity is an incredibly bloated stat in 5e. It does so much, it's not even funny anymore. But the bard can make use of it to its maximum potential, so why shouldn't we? Now, these are already 3 ability scores that you need to focus on. You won't have that many points left, but do put those in the places where you want to put them. Flavor your bard the way you want to. If you are using rolled stats or any other way of distributing attribute scores, put the leftover points wherever you see fit. They will have an effect on some of your skills and maybe how you play the bard, but they won't impact the base class that much. Skill proficiencies then. The bard is one of 2 classes that is very well known for having very good skill modifiers. This already starts at level 1. Normally a class can pick 2 skill proficiencies from a list of, let's say, 5 to 8 skills. The bard gets to pick 3 skills that they are proficient at, and they can be from anything. Really, there's no list. A bard can be proficient at any 3 skills at level 1. This already offers you an amazing amount of flexibility at this low level. Then we are going to have a look at other proficiencies. Your saving throws, for example. Bards are proficient in charisma saves, makes sense, you're a charisma caster, and dexterity saves. Dexterity is obviously the high value saver, allowing you to avoid a lot of traps in dungeons and well-known spells like Fireball and other dexterity-based effects. But actually even your charisma save, even though it's the less popular save, is not bad at all. At higher levels, once you start encountering spells that banish characters from combat, it is usually a charisma save that is going to keep you from being banished to another prison, another dimension, what have you. So even if it is your less valuable save, once you get into the higher levels, it's going to be pretty valuable. And pretty good because you're a charisma player, so you won't be getting banished anytime soon. Other proficiencies, of course, we have to look at armor. Bards get light armor from the get-go. This means your standard Bard is not going to be your most tanky character. On the contrary, you will have the tanking capacities of a wet paper bag at the start. Oh well, learn to live with it. When we look at weapons, you get all simple weapons, and then you get hand crossbows, rapiers, long swords, and short swords. This is actually pretty decent, to be honest. Because you have a few decent weapons to fight with from the get-go. You can have your Bard wield a rapier if you want to be that melee swashbuckler. It's very possible, and the rapier is a good weapon. And there is actually a chance that, for example, you give your Bard a light crossbow, which is a simple D8 ranged weapon. That is actually going to be one of your sources of damage at lower level, depending on your cantrip choices. We'll get to that later. So even though the weapon proficiencies aren't, well, you're not a fighter, they are decent and they will allow you to get a few attacks in at lower level, or if you take one of the subclasses that actually uses weapons, to use them at higher level as well. When we look at your hit die, you get a D8 hit die. It's not great, it's pretty much the average die. At least it's not the D6 that wizards and sorcerers get. It's a start. At level 1, the Bard already gains one of their iconic features, Bardic Inspiration. These are basically dice that you can hand out to other players as a bonus action, and they can use it to add to an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw that they're performing. Like with most of these tricks, they can decide to roll the bonus die after they've rolled the d20, but before they know the result. They're d6s at level 1, and they reset on a long rest. So you'll have 2 or 3 of these to start with. It's not great at level 1, but this feature gains a lot of power throughout the game. So actually, it will become very decent. Once you reach, for example, level 3, it will get a spike, and then from level 5 on, there will be frequent spikes for the Bardic Inspiration ability. There's one more thing, of course, that Bards are really good at, and that is going to be spellcasting. I'm going to assume you know how spells work. So what I'm going to do here is present a few decent options at each level. Good news, the Bard has a lot of decent spells, but more importantly, if there are any spells that are not worth your time because they don't perform as you might expect, or they underperform for the level at which you get them, I'll be sure to point out those spells as well. Don't forget, you are stuck with the spells that you pick. You can only swap out one spell each level up. It cannot be a cantrip. Other than that, the spells you pick will be your spells. Now, the good news is you level up quite a bit, so you do get to swap out quite a lot of spells, but it takes you some time, as opposed to the cleric or the druid who can just prepare their spells. Let's start with cantrips then. Bards get 2 cantrips known at first level. It increases as you go on. Eventually you learn up to 4 cantrips, but it takes you a long while to know those 4. And let's be honest, damage-wise, you don't have a lot of options. If you want damaging cantrips on your Bard, you have the choice between Vicious Mockery and Thunderclap. Thunderclap is actually the easiest to explain, so let's do that one. You're standing somewhere and basically everything around you, like immediately around you, 5-foot range, has to make a Constitution save. If they fail, they take 1d6 thunder damage. It's okay, it's not bad. It is melee range, however, that's a bit tricky for a light armor wearing Bard. But it is thunder damage, which is not often resisted, which is good, and something that carries over to the Bard's other damaging cantrip as well, Vicious Mockery. Vicious Mockery, if your target fails a wisdom save, they take 1d4 psychic damage and they have disadvantage on their next attack roll. You don't take this one for the damage. Vicious Mockery is not a kill switch. It's 1d4, which will scale like most cantrips do to 2d4, 3d4, 4d4 at higher levels, but it's never going to be a damage dealer. At lower levels, it certainly has its uses to impose disadvantage rather on the attack of certain monsters and stuff that's attacking you. But the higher you go, the more attacks certain monsters are starting to get, and it becomes less and less useful, but by that time you have more and more spell slots, so Vicious Mockery will only be your backup. I've gone through all my spell slots, including me level 1's cantrip thing. So you don't have great damaging cantrips like a wizard or a sorcerer or the warlock. Do you have to pick one? No, you don't. It's perfectly possible to pick 2 utility cantrips for your bard. You can rely on your weaponry to deal decent damage, especially at lower levels. If you have that light crossbow that I talked about and you have 14 or 16 dexterity, you're going to be doing 1d8 plus 2, 1d8 plus 3 damage, which is more than a cantrip does in general. I mean, weapon damage is pretty good. So you can perfectly well rely on that to deal damage up to maybe level 4 where you learn your 3rd cantrip. That's when you could pick up Vicious Mockery if you don't have it already. When it comes to utility cantrips, there are so many. The bard has a lot of choice here in between Minor Illusion, which is one of my personal favorites. It allows you to make minor illusions, obviously, which are 5-foot squares if you want, 5-foot cube actually. Or you can also make a sound with Minor Illusion. You get Prestidigitation, or however you pronounce that thing. Light, Dancing Light, Friend's Message. The utility list is enormous, and you can kind of have a look at what you want your bard to do with your cantrips. Also check with your friends, of course. It's not a disaster per se if you don't have Dark Vision and you don't pick Light. You're a bard, you usually have an open hand in which you can carry a torch. Not too big of a problem, to be honest. So cantrip wise, look at have a look for yourself. Do you really want a damaging cantrip at level 1, or is your dexterity high enough that you can rely on weaponry for damage, thus allowing you to pick more utility based cantrips, which are really good and a lot of fun to play around with. There are, however, 2 cantrips that you should stay away from. They are True Strike and Blade Ward. Let's start with the lesser of 2 evils, Blade Ward. Pretty straightforward. You use your action to cast this on yourself. You can't even target one of your friends with it. And you have resistance against the usual physical damages that there are, like bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing. Actually, it's not just physical. If they're magical, bludgeoning, piercing, and physical, you also have resistance against them. But if you have a look at action economy, we gaan dit opnieuw doen. There are, however, 2 cantrips that I want you to stay far, far away from, and those are Blade Ward and True Strikes. They are the biggest traps out there. Blade Ward, very straightforward. You use your action to give yourself resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. This sounds okay, but the action economy in D&D 5e is built in such a way that you are way better off actually doing something. You will achieve a greater effect by possibly killing the enemy or even using Vicious Mockery to give him disadvantage than by not doing anything and gaining a few resistances yourself. You're just standing there still getting punched. It's really not a good spell. But then there is True Strike, which is even worse. For a simple reason. It uses up your concentration. So what True Strike does is simple. You again use your action to give yourself advantage on your next attack roll. This can be either a weapon or a spell attack roll, so that way it's pretty okay. But you use up an action to do nothing, and you use up your concentration. So if you're focusing on a concentration spell, it is broken, it is gone, because now True Strike has come and taken its place, which can be disastrous if you're concentrating on something like Haste, for example, which now your hasted target loses an entire turn because you broke concentration. That's sad if that is for True Strike. So Blade Ward, True Strike, don't take those. Now, your level 1 spells, you get 4 of them, which is not bad. You will have a nice amount of flexibility between those 4 spells to get some utility, some defensive or control spells, and maybe even a damage dealing spell. So that's good stuff, really. There's a few niche spells in your list, but I don't think the level 1 Bard spell list has awful spells. So that's good. Whatever you pick will perform its function and will do a decent job at it, but some of them are a bit niche, like one of my personal favorites, Featherfall. obviously is only useful when people are jumping from great heights or falling down, but when that does happen, and let's be honest, it does happen a lot, it is a great spell. The Bard spell list has a few general characteristics. It has an incredible amount of utility and battlefield control, has access to healing and all types of support spells and buffs, but it is pretty light on heavy damage spells. That's okay, you will have other ways to pick those up later. The good news is that the spells that you do get, the damaging spells that you do get, are quite often a damage type that is not easily resisted, like psychic damage for Dissonant Whispers at level 1, or thunder damage for Thunderclap and Thunderwave as well at level 1. So if you do decide to go to town on an enemy, you can be quite sure that he will not be resisting it most of the time. If you want a nice idea for a comfy set of spells at level 1, pick up a strong control spell like Tasha's Hideous Laughter or Sleep. You could pick up some damage with Thunder Wave. You could pick up Healing Word to help out your allies, and to round that all up, Detect Magic or Identify really add some good utility to your kit. There's others that do other things, but those are two spells that are often used by players to solve mysteries. Don't forget, the Bard also gets ritual casting, so stuff like Detect Magic and Identify can be cast if you have the time to cast them as a ritual without actually spending the spell slot. Also, don't forget, Tasha's Hideous Laughter has added Command and Color Spray to the level 1 Bard list. I really like the addition of Color Spray here. I'm not going to claim that it's my favorite spell, but flavor-wise it really fits the Bard perfectly. Level 2 then. Level 2 means that you get an extra spell. Go ahead, pick something, don't really care, have fun. But you also get Jack of all trades, and Jack of all trades is one of the reasons that Bards makes for such exceptional skill monkeys. What the feature does is very simple. It adds half your proficiency bonus to all ability checks that haven't been using your proficiency bonus yet. So the most obvious one here is that all of the skills that you're not proficient with get a bump equal to half your proficiency bonus, which at this level is +1. If you've been using point buy, this means that you no longer have any negative skill modifiers, which is really good. You are no longer bad at anything, you're just not awesome at everything. Yet, your proficiency bonus will go up, and so these skills will go up with you, which is something that other classes don't get. It is really amazing, and it does exactly what the name promises you. It makes you a jack of all trades. Now, something that people often forget is that Jack of all trades is also added to your initiative roll, because your initiative roll is also an ability check, a dexterity check, but it never uses your proficiency. Nobody uses their proficiency for initiative checks. Wouldn't make any sense, because everybody has the same proficiency check as long as you're at the same level. So Jack of all trades adds a +1 for you. That's really nice. You also gain Song of Rest, which is a decent feature that helps your allies heal quicker, and you yourself as well, during short rests. Basically, whenever anyone is able to use a healing die to heal themselves, and you are playing your Song of Rest, they can roll an additional d6 on top of the healing die. So let's talk about you yourself. You have a d8 healing die. If you want to use it, it's d8 plus your constitution plus a lovely d6 to boost it. It does scale with you. I have to check the numbers to be exact. It goes to a d8 at 9th level, a d10 at 13th level, and a d12 at 17th level. It's okay. It becomes a bit less useful as you level up, because you can only add the die once. You can't add it for every hit die that you use. If you use 4 hit die, you still only get 1 Song of Rest bonus die. So the more dice that you start using and the higher your HP becomes, the less of an impact this feature has. But it's still good because it is completely free healing that doesn't require you to do anything except for tell a story or play a song during a short rest. As of Tasha's Cauldron, Bards at this level also gain a feature called Magical Inspiration, and this does something for Bardic Inspiration that it was unable to do. None of the subclasses could do it. It allows you to add your Bardic Inspiration die, well, it allows your allies to add the Bardic Inspiration die that they received from you to the damage or healing of a spell. That's pretty good. I do wonder, personal opinion, why this wasn't just added to the Valor Bard, because increasing damage with the dice is kind of his thing. He does it for weapons. So I was kind of wondering why doesn't he get the spell bit as well. But all in all, I'm just glad we're getting this. Now, mind you, it's not that you get to add the die to the entire spell. You get to add it to one target that is affected by the spell. And this is simple when you're casting Firebolt. You shoot one guy for 1d10 and you get to add the 1d6 Bardic Inspiration. Yay! If you're casting Fireball, however, you're not adding the bonus die to the entire Fireball. No, you pick one target who gets the additional bonus damage die and becomes extra flamey because of it. Works the same way for healing. You pick one target that is affected by your healing spell and you add the inspiration die to the total amount of healing. I really like that they did this because I've said it in my Tasha's video. People who were using save-based spells or healing spells had no way to make use of Bardic Inspiration on their offensive side. Sure, they could use it for saving throws and such, but they couldn't use it in their main job, namely spellcasting. Level 3 is, of course, our subclass level. Our bard gets to pick a college to which he, she, they will belong. Again, not going to delve into the subclasses in this video. They will get their separate video. What I can tell you about the subclasses is that each and every one of them gets a different use for their Bardic Inspiration die. It is now no longer just a resource to buff what it already buffs, but it can also do something different because of your subclass. It's good stuff. Alongside our subclass at level 3 comes expertise in 2 skills. Now, again, Bards, skill monkeys, top of the class. They get to pick 2 skills in which they gain expertise, which means your proficiency bonus doubles for that skills, raising it to unseen heights and really creating some absurd numbers, to be honest. At level 10, you get 2 more skills to pick expertise in, so that's even better. Of course, level 3 also means that we're getting level 2 spells. This is where it becomes hard to pick which spells are going to be using up your concentration slot. There are so many good concentration spells in this Bard spell list at level 2 that you'll have to think about it. I'll give you some examples. Just allow me to look at my cheat sheet. What do we have here? Oh yes, Enhance Ability, Heat Metal, Hold Person, Phantasmal Force, I love Phantasmal Force, Invisibility, and last but not least, another personal favorite, Suggestion. These are all spells that do a lot, have a great impact on the battlefield, and use up your concentration. If you're looking for some other stuff, if you want some easy blasting power, you have Shatter. Shatter is like a ranged, stronger Thunder Wave, so that's an easy follow-up if you do want some blasting power in your back pocket. Lesser Restoration if one of your allies has been stupid enough to get, blind, deaf, poisoned, a lesser curse maybe even. You never know with those guys. But that's what Lesser Restoration is for. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything adds some of my personal favorite spells to the level 2 Bard list, namely Aid, a really nice HP buff, Enlarge Reduce, a spell that has great use both in combat and out of combat, and last but not least, what was the one? Oh yes, Mirror Image, a really good defensive spell for you as well. What I like to do here is use the retraining feature for my spells. Namely, at this point you have 5 level 1 spells and you will have your 4 level 1 slots, which is good. But I like to retrain one of my level 1 spells into a level 2 spell for the simple reason that you immediately gain 2 level 2 slots at level 3, which is great fun. But you only have 1 level 2 spell, so to open up our options for casting at higher levels, obviously you can also upcast some of your lower spells, but let's not ignore the fact that we have this wonderful list of level 2 spells. So replace one of your level 1 spells that maybe doesn't see use a lot, or you're not entirely happy with how it works, retrain it into another great level 2 spell. In fact, this is something that you should probably do every time you reach a new spell tier. Have a look at your spell list and see what's not pulling its weight anymore. Which spell am I not using or not going to use anymore? Maybe some of them were situational pickups and you can now retrain them into a spell of a new power level that might actually be useful to you. Level 4 is of course a really easy one. You get an ability score increase or you can pick a feat, and you get to do this again at level 8, level 12, level 16 and level 19. There you go, takes care of all those levels. Tasha's is also good here. It gives you the last optional Bard feature. It allows you to retrain which skills you have expertise in to make you even more flexible, or it allows you to retrain a cantrip at any of these ability score increased levels, so keep that in mind. Level 5 is a big one for your bardic inspirations. Not only do they become D8 at this level, you also get them back on a short rest. I'm going to be conservative here and I'm going to assume with the current amount of encounters that tend to happen in a day and what have you, that this is going to double your output that you can do with your bardic inspirations. Whether you're using them for their original use, for the new magical inspiration, or for whatever your subclass allows you to use them for, you're going to be able to use them a lot more and they're going to be just a bit stronger as well. So that's all good stuff really. You also get level 3 spells, and everyone knows level 3 spells is where the fun really starts. Again, you're going to have to allow me to look at my cheat sheet for a bit here. Major Image is good if you like working with illusions. It's a lot stronger than the illusion spells you got up to now. There's Leomond's Tiny Hut, which is also good if you want to be able to give your party a safe space for long rests. It creates a bubble that nothing can enter that wasn't already in the bubble. Mind you, your DM can easily use a mob with Dispel Magic to get rid of the hut if he finds you've been using it a bit too much to keep safe at night. Luckily, Dispel Magic is also on your spell list. It's really a good solve-a-lot spell to get rid of a lot of nasty spell effects. Catnip is also here. It allows you to take, well, for 3 people to take a short rest in just 10 minutes, which is good to use if you have a 4th guy standing watch, because let's be honest, if everyone's asleep, you're just going to get caught every time. But if you have some classes like Fighter and Warlock that rely on short rest a lot, and you yourself with your fancy new bardic inspiration powers now, Catnap rather, let's not give him Catnip, Catnap can actually be really good here. What else can we give you? There is Bestow Curse, which has a lot of options to inflict nasty debuffs on an opponent, including the particularly nasty option that if they fail the saving throw at the start of their turn, they have to spend an entire turn doing nothing. That is awful. And there is of course Hypnotic Pattern if you want to control a large group of creatures at once and have a really strong impact on the battlefield. Hypnotic Pattern is going to be a good friend of yours. Again, there's no real bad spells on this list. There are a few niche spells. Of course, Tasha's adds some things as well. It's Intellect Fortress, which is a new spell, a very niche spell that shores up your mental defenses. Great when you're fighting Mind Flayers though. And you also get Mass Healing Word, which I liked. Mass Cure Wounds was already on the Bard list later down. But getting Mass Healing Words also allows you to keep up if you're that healer subclass. Well, subclass now, but if you're playing the healer Bard, which is very possible, you now have Mass Healing Words to use efficient healing spells on multiple people. Level 6 is mostly subclass stuff, but you do get Counter Charm, which allows you to use your action to give all your allies near you advantage on Fear and Charm for 1 turn, basically until your next turn. It's niche, it's good in its niche because it has no limits on how many times you could use it. So if you're facing a mind control, a heavy encounter, it might be a good option to just keep singing, use your bonus action to toss out some spells here and there or bardics, but just keep singing to keep people sane and in their head. Level 7 then, it only gets you your 4th level spells. So sad we don't get anything else. A few obvious good ones are Dimension Door for great mobility, Confusion for control, Polymorph for, geez, so many things. Polymorph can be used in combat, Polymorph can be used as a utility spell, Polymorph can be used as a healing spell. Polymorph is good. I'm sorry, I like Polymorph. Don't forget, freedom of movement is also there to be able to escape certain sticky situations, or if you're going for the battlefield control, hallucinatory terrain is the thing for some larger scale terrain-based illusions. I think this is one of the first spells that you get that can really affect an entire terrain, which befits the power level of 4th level spells. You can trick enemies into believing there's a pool of lava or a giant cliff somewhere. Can be a lot of fun for those creative players. Tasha's Cauldron added Phantasmal Killer to our spell list, by the way, so have a look at that, maybe it's something for you. Level 8, ability score increase or feed, be gone with it. Level 9, improve Song of Rest, but also gives us our 5th level spells. Again, I have a wonderful list with options here. Animate Object allows you to become a really strong presence on the battlefield. You add quite a few bodies that can soak hits, and you add quite a bit of damage. It is a concentration spell, however, so while you're doing your Disney's Fantasia impression, stay out of harm. Other options are, of course, oh yes, if you like Charm Person, Dominate Person will be a lot of fun for you. Hold Monster rather is here as well, along with Greater Restoration to remove more stupidity from your allies. If you want damage, there is Synaptic Static for you. It's not the I win button that Hypnotic Pattern can be, but it provides decent damage and a pretty good debuff without having to concentrate on it. And that is really the key word here. A lot of stuff that you can glue on your enemies or your allies for that fact require you to use your concentration. Synaptic Static does not. It does decent damage, and it provides a nice debuff that you can just leave there. They get to try to get rid of it with saving throws on a regular basis, but it's okay. It's not your concentration spell. It's not overpowered. It's just right, according to me. You also get Raise Dead here, which means, of course, that your allies can now die safely, knowing that you will always keep your 5th level spell slot to raise them from the dead, right? Tasha's adds Rory's Telepathic Bond, by the way. Level 10. Oh boy. Magical Secrets. There we go. What is this feature? It's possibly one of the most iconic Bard features out there. It allows you to pick 2 spells from any spell list in the game, as long as you have a spell slot in which you can cast a spell. They also become Bard spells for all intents and purposes, so you will use Charisma to cast those spells. I could make an entire video about what to pick for Magical Secrets, really. The list is, I'm not going to say it's endless, but it is literally the entire Dungeons and Dragons spell book. We're going to assume you're not going to need any level 1 or 2 spells unless you're making some specific combo here, but anything from 3rd, 4th, 5th level spells can be really good pickups for your character depending on what you're planning to do. I'll give you a few simple examples. If you're playing the party healer, grab Beacon of Hope, maximize your healing of all of those idiots who keep getting punched in the face. Party doesn't have haste yet? Grab haste, buff someone. Everybody loves haste. If you're a bard who uses your weapons yourself, even you will love haste. Jesus, what's not to love about haste? You want damage? There's so much choice here. Use Cone of Cold for all I care. Counterspell, also a great option if you want more control on the battlefield. You could pick some summoning magic. Literally anything goes here. Jesus, what more is there to explain? Pick your free spells. Even better, you get 2 more of these magical secrets at level 14 and level 18. So once you reach into the highest tiers of spellcasting, you get to pick more spells from anyone's spell list. Whatever spell you want to complete your build, it's yours. Do keep in mind though that at the levels where you gain magical secrets, you don't gain any bard spells. Well, you don't gain any spells from the bard list. If you need some of those, retrain lower spell slots because you really don't want to waste a magical secret on having to pick up a spell that you could get when leveling up. Level 11 brings us level 6 spells. Mass suggestion is here. I love suggestion, so obviously being able to mind control 12 people at once is something that I'm going to like as well. Otto's Irresistible Dance is here as well. And while it is not as good as it was in previous editions, it still is a really strong setup spell. It is also a really strong disable that doesn't break when the target takes damage. You incapacitate the target quite a bit, and it doesn't break when they take damage, so that's pretty good. The level 6 spell is maybe my least favorite spell list for the Bard, but there's still some good options here. There's no damage options, there's no strong damage options here, but you do have your magical secrets if you want to take care of that. So whenever you go and look at the Bard list and you're going like, something's missing here, go and look for it in someone else's spell list. I'm not going to keep repeating that. You are the jack of all trades spellbook now. Tasha's has added an excellent option here with Hero's Feast. If you used Aid at lower levels, you're going to love Hero's Feast because it's basically a powered up version of Aid. At level 13 we get our 7th level spells. Now this is where the upper tier of magic really begins. You get Force Gauge if you want to completely lock someone up. If you're into illusions, you are going to love Arcane Mirage. I think it's one of the most powerful illusion spells out there. It allows you to create almost anything on a pretty large area. You can create buildings and terrain and like an entire, you could create a tiny village, people not included I think, I'm not sure actually, with Arcane Mirage, and they feel real, they smell real. You can really convince, you could whip up an imaginary castle for all I care and it would feel, smell real, it would look real. I love this spell, it's very strong. You get Teleport for travel, regeneration to help your fighter get back that arm he lost. He'll appreciate that, the smug bastard. There is one spell in here that is a little bit of a trap, and that would be Mordecai's Sword. On paper, it's powerful, don't get me wrong. Every turn, as a bonus action, you get to do a spell attack with the sword, and you can move the sword as part of the action, that's all good, which deals 3d10 damage. Now that is a lot of damage on a bonus action, let's be straightforward here. It does a lot of damage. But that is not really what I want to spend my level 7 spell slots on. I mean, you're reaching the tiers of spellcraft where your spells become reality altering. I just explained some of the options that you can do with, for example, Arcane Mirage. You can create so many things with that spell, and then here's just a big sword that goes swish swish. I'm sure if you want to deal damage, other spells are going to be a lot better at that and might create more damage in one go rather than you having to spend concentration on keeping a sword flying around that does some damage each turn. As I said, it's good damage, it's just not what I want to spell my higher tier spell slots on. Tasha's, by the way, adds the new spell Dream of the Blue Veil, which is a interdimensional travel spell, and gives us Prismatic Spray as well. Level 14, as I said, subclass and magical secrets. On to the next one. Level 15 does two things. Your bardic inspirations are d12 now, and we get 8 level spells. Again, there's no damage spells on the bard list, you know where to get them. You do get, let's have a look here. Oh yes, you get Dominate Monsters, which is good. You also get a spell, I forgot the name, but one of the effects is that you reduce somebody's intelligence to 1, which is basically turning them into a plant. Very, very, very strong, obviously. And there's also Mind Blank. Mind Blank is kind of the ultimate protection versus mind magic. Let's call it that. And it's actually so strong that even Wish cannot dispel it. That is amazingly strong, actually. It's niche, it's super niche, but within its niche, it is the absolute best. If even Wish cannot destroy it, then you're set. Of course, keep in mind that your Dungeon Master could also be using this spell. So before you blow Wish on cleaning someone's mind, try to see if you have some way to see if Mind Blank is currently affecting the target. That could really be worth it before you blow your 9th level slot. Tasha's adds Antipathy and Sympathy to your list, by the way. Level 17, of course, 9th level spells. You have a decent selection: True Polymorph, Mass Polymorph, Power Word Kill, Power Word Stun, a few other options, and whatever options you don't have but you'd like, you can pick up next level with, you've guessed it, Magical Secrets. Now make sure that these are the encounter or reality altering spells that you want them to be. Your 9th level spell should just change the way an encounter is working. It should change the way a part of your campaign might even be working. That's the power of having this high level of spell casting available to you. Consult with your DM now and then, maybe to see whether you're not killing all of his plans outside of the sessions, but otherwise enjoy your maximum power. Our capstone at level 20 is honestly a bit disappointing. Basically, if you start combat without any use for Bardic Inspiration, you get one use. That is your fabulous level 20 capstone. It's a bit sad, really. It doesn't... I mean, you've just come from the epitome of spell casting power, and your level 20 ability is like, yeah, here's a d12 to roll sometimes. It's a bit sad, but hey, it is what it is. Well, there's Bards for you. This is already a long video, so I'm not going to waste any more of your time though. I would love to talk about feats for the Bards, but I'll keep that for the subclass videos. We conclude, Bard can literally do anything thanks to their extensive skill list and magical secrets. Good on them. See you all next time in the Attic Dungeon.